In today's show, it's a crossover edition of the program. Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies and Locked On Blazers. Are the Grizzlies hunting a big man? And what might a trade package look like if they want to swap places with the Blazers and chase Donovan Clingan? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard,
Yeah.
Mike Richmond, host of Locked On Blazers. And I'm joined in this crossover special edition by beat writer for the Commercial Appeal and host of Locked On Grizzlies, Damichael Cole. Damichael, how you doing?
What's going on, Mike? We got. They call me D Mike, and you're Mike, so we got D Mike and Mike in the building today. Hold on, let's talk Grizzlies. Let's talk Blazers. Let's do it.
Let's get into it. So this show is admittedly, and we were talking about this off mic a little bit. We're admittedly getting into the hypotheticals here a little bit, but I think this is an interesting one just for kind of the where we are in the draft cycle.
Right.
The Grizzlies are probably in the market for a big man one way or another by the time the season starts, a big man one way or another, but they're also a good basketball team that has a lottery pick. So they kind of have a luxury of maybe hunting for fit more than other teams necessarily. Right. This draft is wide open and bizarre and who knows what's going to happen. It has a real like Anthony Bennett 2013 vibe to me. We'll see what happens.
Gets the Victor Oladipo then. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, well, who's going to get Giannis? It's. I hope it's the team in the Northwest. We need the content, baby. But Donovan Clingan is behind Alex Sarr, probably the number one center prospect in the draft. And there is some reporting that the recent mock drafts, including one from ESPN, and I think you've seen some other of the bigger services, they have Clingan kind of falling down draft boards. And a guy who was maybe projected to go top 5, maybe top 3, is kind of slipping a little bit. Yeah. There's even been some reporting that Memphis might try to trade up to 3 with Houston to go get Donovan Clingan. And maybe that's a show for another day, T-Mike.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I've seen Donovan Clingan everywhere. I've seen him at 2. I've seen him at 9. I've seen him at 7. I've seen him at 6. Like, he's kind of the perfect, like, microcosm of what this draft class is right now. Like, you got certain guys on one day they're mocked to go 3rd, mocked to go 4th. Then on the next day, you look at another mock and they're going 10th or 11th or 12th. I mean, I've seen Rob Dillingham, like, 3rd in the market. I've seen him 15th.
Out of the lottery. Yeah, exactly.
This draft class is one of a kind for sure. But you know what? It makes for fun content. And specifically with Donovan Clingan, the appeal there is there are only pretty much 2 bigs that are like generally from a consensus standpoint that are in the top 10 of all these mock drafts that we're talking about. And most teams, and we'll talk about it more from the Blazers side in a little bit here. But the general feeling is if you look at a lot of these rosters, they don't really need big men. But the Grizzlies, They got a point guard. They got a shooting guard. They got a ton of wings. So they can figure out something there. They got a power forward who was an all-star in Jaren Jackson Jr. or center, wherever you want to put him at. But they need one more big. And this guy kind of feels like, okay, they were gifted this extra draft pick or whatever because of the way the season played out. He feels like the missing piece.
He certainly could be. And there's some reporting. So, like, I think most of the services have Alex Sarr and Risachet and Zach Risachet 1, 2. 3 is the wild card, right? Whatever Houston does is going to be whether they trade that pick or whether they go for it. They seem relatively unlikely on their own to draft a 20-year-old center. They've got Alperen Şengün. He's pretty good. They just traded for Steven Adams. So they have their sort of backup center, right? They don't seem like a center landing spot. It gets a little dicey after that. Like, San Antonio, people say they don't need a center. They could draft a center. I don't think that would be that weird if they drafted a center. 5, Detroit, who knows, right? Who knows? They could do anything. They have a new person in charge. Like they need Trajan Langdon, right? And Trajan Langdon might be say like anyone from the old guard is not mine. Like I don't care. I got nothing for Jalen Duren. I got nothing for Isaiah Stewart. And Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman and all the other young centers they've Pokemoned over the last couple of years. But Charlotte could conceivably take a center at 6. They have Mark Williams, but like
He's got to be healthy. I like him, but he just
too.
has to be healthy. Like,
yeah,
I think, with him being a recent first round pick, if you could get something else, I would, but he has to be healthy. Like, he played 30-something games this past season. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it would be a little bit weird if they invested another lottery pick in a center, but it wouldn't be like a crime, right? Like, they totally could. Yeah. But I think the logic is that Houston, San Antonio, Detroit, and Charlotte are probably not in the natural fit for a center. So if Clingan doesn't go in the top 3, the natural next landing spot for him is a 7 with the Blazers. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today, is like the idea that if that's how the board shakes out and the Blazers are on the clock at 7, what would the Grizzlies offer? What would a package kind of look like? So you talked about it a little bit. Like, what are the Grizzlies' sort of aims this summer? Because they're going to be good next year. I'm pretty confident they're going to be back to being one of the good teams again. But what are their aims this summer?
The main thing is big. Like it starts there. That's the number one goal. I mean, general manager Zach Kleiman, he usually keeps everything close to the vest, and still is so far throughout this process. Like, they're one of the teams that, they don't give out any information on their pre-draft visits and things like that. You're not going to find out, what's going on, who's coming to Memphis and visiting, unless they're, unless it's reported through other areas or whatnot. But they want to get another big. He said it after the exit interviews. Kleiman basically said that, they know. They know what they need. They traded away Steven Adams. They traded away Xavier Tillman Sr. You just got Brandon Clark back off of a torn Achilles. He played, 8-9 games at the end of the season. You got Jaren Jackson Jr. Outside of those two guys, you don't have much size there. And if you look at the Grizzlies, you're talking about them getting back to the relevance that they were over the previous 2 seasons. In those 2 seasons, they were a top 5 rebounder team in the NBA.
Right.
This past season, they were one of the worst. So the idea of them being back in that tier starts with getting someone who can kind of elevate them back in that category, like a Steven Adams did once upon a time. That's the starting point. They also, there's a shooting need there as well. They got Desmond Bain, they got Luke Kennard, but teams aren't scared of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. shooting, and Marcus Smart even to a lesser degree. So I feel like they're going to add some shooting things as well. But the main area is this big. Like this, it's funny because the Grizzlies are in this draft spot, and usually when you're in the top 10, you probably got a couple needs that you need to hit on. There's just one very obvious one with this team. Like they got their point guard, shooting guard, power forward, even Marcus Smart. The wing spots feel safe right now at least. But that 5th starter seems like the spot that they really need to hit on, and all intents and purposes feels like it's going to be a center.
Yeah, it seems like that's the obvious one, and it's not like I don't think Donovan Clingan is going to step in and play 35 minutes a night on a playoff team, but he might be useful. And I think this was mentioned on a guest on a previous show on Locked On Blazers I did, is like, you look at the Derek Lively archetype, right? Like a guy he's a drop big. He can pass a little bit. He can defend the rim. He doesn't do a lot else. He could pass, he could pass in the short roll, but like drop coverage, defend the rim, pass a little. I think Donovan Clingan could probably do that. And when you look at the impact that Lively's had, now he hasn't been as good in the finals, and everyone changes their opinion when you get to the highest level of basketball. But if you remember all the other levels of basketball, Derek Lively was really useful, and Clingan is like a Lively except jumbo size. Like he's just
7'3", 280-pound version.
Yeah, he's just so freaking big. He's like an 8'9" standing reach. And I think, I guess before we get into it, what are you a believer? Are you a Clingan believer? Where are you with Clingan as in your own sort of scouting purposes?
When it comes to bigs, I have this idea. For one, we have to start with bigs develop slower than guards. I think that's kind of always been like the general consensus, and it's kind of shown itself throughout the history of the NBA. With Derek Lively's type of role, there's a difference there because you don't ask him to do, a whole bunch of things, and even with him having a quote unquote successful rookie year, I mean, he only averaged like 8 points a game.
Very narrow ask.
Exactly. Like rookie guards have to go out and average 17, 18 a game, at least, when they're drafted high in the first round or whatever the case may be. So there's a bigger transition period when it comes for those bigs. But so with all that being said, when it comes to Clingan, here's where I stand. I think he can be a very good big. but it's all situational. You put him in the right situation where you're not asking him to put his back to the basket and say, hey, go make 4 jump hooks a game or anything like that. Like, yeah, go set some real hard, solid screens, roll to the rim. We're going to throw you a couple alley-oops here, protect the rim on the defensive end. He ends up averaging 11 and 8 as a rookie on 27 minutes. And next thing you know, he's one of the top rookies in the NBA, and he gets to build on it from there. Now in year 2, we're talking about him adding more of a three-point shot and things like that. Like, that's a typical learning curve for me for very capable of that. I think, when I look at, Ivica Zubac, the way he protects the rim, and he's capable of scoring in bunches in certain games. And then the other games, he can say, you know what, Kawhi, PG, y'all go get 30 apiece. I'll take my 8 points and 14 rebounds and we'll win. I can see Clingan kind of playing that type of role. Someone who, when you need him to destroy mismatches and things like that, he's very capable, but he's not going to be an every night, 18 and 12, 20 and 12 type of guy.
Yeah, I like the Zoo comparison. I think that's pretty. He's like a bigger Zubac, and I'm a big Zubac believer. I think he's obviously can't really play in every. He can't play in every situation, like specifically the situation where he has to guard Luka Doncic in space. That's not great. I think that's like, I'm a little worried about Clingan's overall offense. Like, I don't know how he's going to score, but if you could pass and set screens, like, you could probably get away with it. Yeah. I would also say, like, the best version of the Grizzlies stink in the half court on offense, and that's like a 59 win version of the Grizzlies. They get in the half court, it's like, oh no, but they run, they're an elite
they will
defensive
destroy you
team.
In transition.
They clean the defensive glass and they go, and then when it gets to big moments, they say, can Desmond Bane and Job get us a bucket with maybe some spot up shooting from Triple J, and they get there. Like, so it's like, am I worried that Clingan does it, like, continues to make hurts them on the half court? No, because the good version of the Grizzlies already suck there, and we've seen them be really good with that as a weakness. To me, that's not that big of a deal. So let's kind of flip it and talk about it from like why the Blazers and kind of where they are. That's what we'll do in the second segment, because I think we know where the Grizzlies stand. Let's talk about where the Blazers stand and why a deal in this hypothetical could come about. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's number one sportsbook. And right now, it's the finals in the NBA, the finals in the NHL, and they want to make sure that every shot counts. Plus, you got summertime baseball. So get in all the action right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the finals MVP in the NHL, finals MVP on the hardwood in the NBA, or who's going to hit one out of the park. If you're watching a baseball game, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. That's FanDuel, America's number one sports book. All right. You're still listening to Locked On Grizzlies, still listening to Locked On Blazers. I'm Mike Richmond, host of Locked On Blazers, and this is Damichael Cole, Locked On Grizzlies. So,
yeah, Mike, we got to get into this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Because here's my thing. You mentioned those teams that we said do not need bigs, pretty much when you look at them on paper in the draft. I think you mentioned Detroit, Charlotte, Houston. You didn't mention Portland in this scenario, and in Memphis locally, we've kind of put Portland in that grouping in terms of DeAndre Ayton. He has the big contract, right? It seemed like he progressively got better throughout the season. I know he had a stretch, I think it was February or March, where he was collecting some double doubles, and he had the hilarious quote basically saying he could have been this guy and all of that, and people ran with it a little bit and whatnot. But the point is, he's still relatively young. Like, he just entered his second deal. But why do you think that Clingan could be an option? And not even just you, like, educate us. I'm confused. Right. I've seen mock drafts that have Clingan going to Portland, and I just don't make sense of it. It seems like Ayton is along the timeline of the Anthony Simons and that group. Like, but why would they go younger with a Clingan? And what would that mean for Ayton? Like, I can't map that out.
Well, I think it is because Portland is in such like the early nascent stages of a rebuild. Now they've been kind of bad for 3 years, so you'd think they'd like to be further along, but they're just 1 year post Dame, right? They finally tore the Band-Aid off, and I guess he kind of tore the Band-Aid off, but they like they're in this the early stages, so like there is some sort of concern. I don't even know if concern within the organization, but I'd say there's some speculation outside of the organization, including maybe like one specific podcaster over in Portland that says like by the time they get good, DeAndre Ayton's going to be either a free agent or they're going to have to pay him. And if they have to pay him and he needs a raise, it's like, do you really want to pay 27-year-old DeAndre Ayton $45 million? Is he like, is that the move? I think DA was like awful to begin the season. Like he was just like straight up objectively bad. I don't think you could, obviously new situation.
They were getting laughed at a little bit back then. Yeah.
New situation, bad teammates, but objectively bad. And then the final couple months of the year, he was like totally good. Like he was functional and a good NBA center. Depending on which player you get, like if you get somewhere in the middle of that, you don't want that. If you get only the guy who played the last 2 months of the season, that kind of changes things. But he's 25. He has 2 years remaining on his contract. He's young and he's useful, but he might not be part of the next good Blazer team. And if they value Clingan and they say he's going to be really good, like they are not like you and I who see like Ivica Zubac or like, Steven Adams with more flair, like Steven Adams with a razor is what I've been calling him.
Yeah.
Like if they see something more than that, they see a Rudy Gobert, which I've heard some of the comps, which seems like a lot. seems like a lot.
That's
whatever. Yeah. If they see the 4-time DPOY, sure. But if they see that, then Clingan could be an investment because they're young core that they've drafted the last 2 years. Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe are Shaedon Sharpe just turned 21. Scoot Henderson is 20. Clingan would join that group as a 20-year-old. They're going to be the worst team in the Western Conference again next year. So they're probably going to be, probably. I think there's a world where they're not, but I've seen the West and I know the deal. Memphis is going to get better. San Antonio is going to get better. Unless Houston really bottoms out, it's going to be lonely down there. And I think the Blazers are fine, comfortable, and probably prepared to be the worst team in the West. So they're going to get another high draft pick. So then you're talking stacking 4 years of drafts, and that's your core, and not guys who are on the roster. So not Anthony Simons and not DeAndre Ayton.
Okay.
Does that work? Who knows? Is that too long of a timeline to pull off? Yeah, probably. But I think that's the vision on why Clingan would make sense. I've warmed up to it a little bit. I would probably just draft one of the wings if it was me at 7, but I won't freak out if they draft Clingan at 7. Like it wouldn't be, yeah.
That makes sense to me because, now that you pretty much, you just separated Anthony Simons from that tier, that core. And now I get it. Now I get it because I've always, when I saw him play the last couple years against the Grizzlies,
he's been really good against the Grizzlies specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. He's been really good against the Grizzlies. Like, we don't see him miss shots in Memphis. So seeing that, I've always kind of pictured that, him, Scoot Henderson. Shaedon Sharpe looks like he can be a 2, possibly a 3. Like, they got some versatility with him, so you can kind of move pieces around that. And I've kind of thought that, maybe they'll target a wing, to put around those guys like you just mentioned. And even I did a mock draft recently where I don't know, I think I haven't seen other mock drafts really do this, but I took a swing and basically say, Cody Williams, makes sense.
I think that's a very, very reasonable pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Cody Williams is a tantalizing defender. Shaedon Sharpe has offensive upside. But I pictured Anthony Simons into that group. So if you're taking him out of the equation, and DeAndre Ayton, I think from a best player available standpoint, when you get to 7, which is why all this Clingan trade talk has been a big deal, because if he's on the board at 7, and even if Portland is saying, okay, we'll stick with DeAndre Ayton, I still don't see him falling much further just because the idea that he's a really good player in this draft from a best player. Like if you put him on a big board, he's probably roughly top 5, on a big board. But from a fit standpoint, he's the guy because of the center spot who has some potential to fall. So that makes a little bit more sense to me when you kind of map out what the core looks like in Portland. Because I've always, up to this point, just like, okay, Portland, you kind of just check them off the list.
Right. And it seemed pretty reasonable that when you're doing the exercise that Clingan could be there at 9, right? Like it seems like pretty much like it seems like, hey, DeAndre Ayton, and then it's the Spurs again in between Memphis and Portland at 8. And it's like, well, they passed on him once. They're probably going to take a guard and a wing. Like they probably, they could do whatever they want. I think they could take Clingan. Yeah, I think they could take Clingan. I think you could play Clingan and Wemby next to each other.
For sure.
I think it makes more sense to have Wemby be mostly a center with like a little bit of power forward minutes.
His game like just went when they moved him to center. You remember he started the season at power forward. Yeah.
But I mean, like, if you, with all due respect to Portland legend Zach Collins, what if you just played him next to a better center?
that too. Yeah. I see you didn't want to disrespect Zach Collins, but no, seriously, I completely agree.
I think his future is a center, right? He's gigantic. He's an elite rim protector. His spacing allows the geometry to change because it's like you get 5 out plus the rim protection plus the lob threat. Like you get everything you want. Everything. Like I think it wouldn't make a ton of sense for the Spurs to use a lottery pick on a center, but they could. But I think like the math from the good people in Bluff City says like he could be there at 9. But I guess what we're supposing. What if he's not? And what if the Blazers call your bluff and they say, you know what? We'd be happy to take Cody Williams at 9. That feels very, very comfortable to us, but we're not going to do it for free. We're going to take Donovan Clingan at 7, and then you can pay for it. If you want him, you got to pay for it. So let's talk about what a trade might look like to close the show. Like I think there's a world in which this is a real conversation that happens. So let's have a fake version of it to close the show. Join us in that third segment, won't ya?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Here's the thing about BetterHelp. We all carry around these different stressors, right? Some big, some small. And if you've been following Locked On Grizzlies, our friends are Locked On Blazers are about to find out that one of the biggest stresses I've been having is I can't believe the Grizzlies traded Steven Adams. And since the Grizzlies traded Steven Adams, we're having this conversation right now. But guess what? There are more important things than some of the things that we're coping with through our sports things. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your personal schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And whether it's sports or whether it's real life situations, they'll be there for you anytime for no additional charge. So get those things off your chest with BetterHelp right now. All you got to do is visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off of your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off of your first month. Go give BetterHelp a try.
All right, still pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting here with Damichael Cole. You're also listening to Locked On Grizzlies because this is a crossover edition. Okay, so we kind of talked about the logic of both these teams. Say we get there, draft night. I don't think this is a trade that would happen until like Portland is on the clock, right? Like because it would have to all of the other things would have to play out, kind of as we've teased it, right? So Charlotte's made their pick. They got I don't know. Rob Dillingham, right?
Yeah. And Clingan is still just hanging on the board over there. He's clinging
there.
on.
He's sitting in the green room with his tight fade, his curly hair. He's got that classic Gen Z haircut.
Yeah, sweating it a little bit.
Yeah, he is. He's sweating it. He's wearing a gigantic suit. I bet I'm going to just go out on a limb here. I bet we see a lot of dudes wearing shorts with their suits this year. I think that's going to be a Gen Z NBA draft thing is people wearing shorts with their suits.
I can see it.
Yeah. So picture this. 7'3", 280 pounds. He's wearing basically capri pants and a suit jacket. Blazers are on the clock. What do you think a reasonable offer from the Grizzlies are? And I'll try to play hardball, but like we can hash something out.
We'll start here. Before we get into the players and things like that, I'm gonna throw what my co-host Joe Monax proposed out there. He had a proposal, and his proposal was a simple one, very simple. He said, let's go 9, and the Grizzlies have an additional second-round pick this year, which is at 39. He said 9 and 39 for 7. What do you think about that?
What do I want 39 for? I'll just take Donovan Clingan and go home. I'll take my ball and go home. So I think here's the thing about specifically the Blazers situation. They're a little over indexed in the 2024 draft. They have 7, they have 14, they have 34, they have 40, and they have 13 guaranteed players under contract next year, or 11 guaranteed players under contract with 3 non-guaranteeds, 2 of which seem like locks to 2 of which are locks to make the roster. They basically have 13 guys plus 4 draft picks. They can't deal with more rookies. So like another pick in this draft isn't super valuable. I do think there is a world in which multiple seconds gets it done down the line. And the Grizzlies have a couple future seconds. They've got a 2025 like triple protected Houston, Oklahoma City. I think they get the best of that. Is that right? I believe that's how it works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They've got a 2026 from the Clippers, which I might bet on the Clippers being bad in 2 years. We'll see. They got 2027. They got and further down the line, they've got a couple in 2030. I don't think you want to trade for 2030 second round picks. I think it's probably a little too deep.
And they have some strong pick swaps with the Suns.
Right. They've got some juice. So I think I would want 2 future seconds at a minimum. Can I pitch you a more insane version of the trade? Okay.
Let's get it.
Okay, I've got my preferred trade machine pulled up, and what I am offering is 7 and Time Lord Rob Williams, who is totally healthy. Don't ask no follow-ups, please. In exchange for Santi Aldama, 9, and a top 8 protected first-round pick in 2026.
Whew. Okay, I'm listening really hard on this one. This is one of those ones. Zach Kleiman picks up the phone. And he says, wait, let me get right back to you. I know we only got 3 or 4 minutes while the clock's ticking, but give me 1 second. Then he calls Tayshaun Prince, over, in the front office. Then he calls over a couple more people, and he talks through this one. And he says, look, here's the thing. Time Lord makes a lot of sense in Memphis.
Perfect Grizzly in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Just in terms of some of the things they need. But the one problem, other than injuries and things like that, because it's not like the Grizzlies have PTSD or anything because Chandler Parsons and anything like that. It's not like they have any type of PTSD taking swings on guys and giving them a lot of money. That's never happened before in Memphis. But with all that being said, Brandon Clark and Robert Williams have a lot of overlap in their game.
They do. It would be hard to play them. It would be hard to play them together. You're playing. You are so in some ways. What I'm offering here is the understanding that drafting a 20-year-old center is maybe not the best use of a team that the Grizzlies aren't just a team that's going to be pretty good next year. They're going to be a team that wants to win the NBA title, right? Like, and I think I don't think that's out of this. Like, I don't think that's outlandish. If you look how open the West is, there's a lot of good teams, but there is no team that is so much better than anyone else that you say you can't win the title. The freaking Mavericks are in the finals right now, right? Like, and who would have thought that? And I don't think Dallas is wholly better in talent wise than Memphis. They're a little better probably, but they're not it's not a huge jump at all. And if fully healthy, like Desmond Bane, Ja, and Tripp could be really special. I think my sell on this is that Rob is a much better 16-game player than you could bank on Donovan Clingan being. And if not, you still end up with the rights to Donovan Clingan if you want it.
Yeah, and I like it. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to take this trade. I think we got a deal. Because here's the Santi Aldama part of this, right? Santi Aldama, I think, is still a nicely talented player. He can play, the 4. He even played the 3 a couple games with Memphis. The question there is he has to get a little bit stronger and things like that. But from a fit standpoint, the Grizzlies, as we saw as the season went on, and Gigi Jackson, who made the second team, all-rookie team, the idea there is some people believe that he's more of a 4 than a 3 a long-term. And you got Vince Williams, who's probably going to be a 3 long-term and whatnot alongside of Desmond Bane. So if Gigi's a 4 going forward, and you got Jaren Jackson Jr., and we're talking about putting another big alongside of him, Santi, I think a lot of people are easily projecting him to be in the Grizzlies rotation next season. Me personally, I said it on our show a couple days ago, I'm not sure where he's in the equation anymore if we're saying Gigi Jackson at 19 is going to jump into the Grizzlies rotation with all of the teams back healthy. So with all that being said, sign me up for Time Lord. I know some people on the Locked On Grizzlies side are going to say, Damichael, Chandler Parsons, does that not ring a bell to you?
Yeah,
listen. Any of these injury things, does this past season, the way it played out with the Grizzlies using 34 players, Damichael, are you not considering any of that? And I'll say, look, I get it, but I've been of the opinion all summer long that the Grizzlies, no matter what they do, whether it's get a big in the draft, whether it's a trade, they need to double down. So in this case, yes, sign me up for Robert Williams. Do that trade. I love the trade. You get a starting caliber big, but I'm going to go in free agency and I'm going to double dip. Maybe I go get a Goga Patadze for a veteran's minimum. Maybe I go get, I don't know, a JaVale McGee or something out there. Go sign someone for the vets minimum so you can still have Brandon Clark in another serviceable time Lord misses 15, 20 games or whatever the case may be. But when he's on the floor, I agree with you. That's a good 16-game player. When he was traded from the Celtics, I remember that trade. They weren't really tripping out over Brogdon in that trade. They were tripping more about Robert Williams. So sign me up. I like it. The Grizzlies get another, oh my goodness, him alongside of Jaren Jackson Jr. Good luck scoring at the rim.
And the passing, I think, really helps because Time Lord's not much of he doesn't have a lot of spacing, but he can roll and he can pass, and that'll help it'll help with cutters. It'll allow Marcus Smart maybe to be unlocked a little bit as a cutter, and Bane, who's I think an improving cutter, although not a great one just yet. In general, I like it. So here's the trade we've agreed upon, and here's everyone, dear listeners, if you're listening on YouTube, just tell us that you hate it in the comments. Just go ahead and do it, or you love it, or you love it.
You could love it.
But okay, so it is Robert Williams and number 7 to the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for Santi Aldama, number 9 in this draft, and a top 8 protected 2026 first round pick from the Grizzlies, which likely will not, they're going to be a playoff team, that relatively likely, unless they have another year like this. And then you would end up with 9. I think, listen, imperfect, but I think there's a world in which, I don't know if there's a world in which this trade happens because it's hard to just call your shot. But I think there's a world in which a conversation like this happens on draft night. And if it does, you'll have heard of Damichael and Mike from Locked On Grizzlies and Locked On Blazers break it down for you. Yeah,
it's perfect. They double dip. Yeah. I like it. Like you get Clingan, you get Robert Williams. Now you protect yourself from the. You got 3 legit rim protectors in this case: Clingan, Robert Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr. And you address the shooting in other areas, and you keep 39 in this case. Mike doesn't want the 39th pick, so you go get whoever the best shooter is available at that point, and you get ready to roll. I like it.
You make it happen. Damichael, thanks so much for doing this. This was a whole bunch of fun.
Of course. Yeah, of course, Mike. I enjoyed it. And I think the Grizzlies people enjoyed this as well. Because we had no clue that Clingan could be of interest on the Portland side. Now, you might have just, a couple people in Memphis probably lost some hairs knowing that Portland may have some
guy doesn't know.
Interest, but
dear listeners, here's the thing. You're listening to Tuesday, June 11th show. We got more shows for you the rest of the week, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube, free on all platforms. So if you made it this far into the program and you're listening to a draft hypothetical trade show in June, tell your friends about the program. Say, hey, I really like Locked On Grizzlies. They just had a cool crossover episode. Hey, I really like Locked On Blazers. They had a really cool crossover episode. And then come back tomorrow and listen for the next one. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you soon.